What's up, Generation Iron fans? How you doing? This is Fred Biggie Smalls, and we are here with tips from Professor Smalls. Today we're going to be going into genetics and how they play a role into you becoming a great bodybuilder, an okay bodybuilder, or helping you to become the best fitness athlete you can be, to create the best physique you can possibly create. What I can tell you is genetics are super important, but I do not believe they are more important than hard work and discipline and extreme focus. Also, cannot be changed by the way you train. So whatever shape God gave you is kind of the shape of the muscle. We can add more muscle, we can make the muscle denser, but the shape of the muscle is going to be the muscle, and that's what we're given. So we have to work within those parameters to create the best physique possible based on your genetics. So that being said, I preface it with that, anything I'm gonna say about genetics. Obviously you want, wider shoulders, smaller hips, smaller joints, because it's gonna make the muscle you start to build, illusion-wise, look bigger. If you're smaller waist and smaller hip structure, then your taper from your shoulders down into your waist is going to give you more of a V taper. But that's the outward appearance, how your body loses body fat. That's another big one. You have three different somotypes. So you have your endomorph, which is typically your heavier set person who's typically has wider hips, holding a lot more body fat, has a hard time losing body fat. Then you have your mesomorph, which is the person that's I think that's ideal for bodybuilding. We're able to lose body fat very easily if we follow a structured program, follow a good lifting program, and a good nutrition program. And then you have your ectomorph, which also make good bodybuilders, but the ability for them to put on muscle is somewhat challenging because they're always having to eat, and they almost never hold fat. So an ectomorph is gonna be closer to the ideals in endomorph, but I think a mesomorphic physique is actually your ideal body type for being an actual bodybuilder. For example, as I was growing up, even as a teenager, if I decided to eat properly, train properly, I always looked really good. Actually won open NPC shows as a teenager and always had that structure where people will kind of look at you and go, I think he could be a really good bodybuilder. It wasn't like I had to follow an extreme diet or anything to look good, but I had to always eat properly or I would gain body fat pretty easily. I'm sure all of you know people that can eat whatever they want, cheeseburgers, fried chicken, all types of garbage, and they still look really good. And that's because typically they're your true ectomorph, and they can get away with a lot more leeway in their nutrition program, but if they don't eat enough, they're losing muscle like crazy. So whereas, your mesomorph is gonna go, as long as they eat 6 to 8 meals a day and they're not too heavy in fat, too much sugar, then they're gonna be able to consume nutrients and consistently grow muscle. Your ectomorph, they miss a meal and they might lose 5 or 6 pounds that day. So that's it. That gives you a clear indication of what the two different body types are about. Now, when you go down to your endomorph, that person could probably not eat, they could not eat consistently for 3 or 4 days, and the opposite's gonna happen. They're gonna gain body fat because their metabolism is naturally slower. Their ability to put on fat is a lot higher than the other two body types, but their ability to lose fat is really challenging. So that is a very hard body type to make into a bodybuilder. It can happen, but like I said, the level of focus, the level of hard work they got to put in is going to be on a whole different level than the other two body types. Whereas the mesomorph is going to have to do more cardio, the endomorph is going to do a whole lot more cardio, and the ectomorph might not have to do any cardio on the same level of calories. So that kind of gives you an indication of how those three different body types work. And when it comes to building muscle, extreme calorie consumption with the ectomorph, high calorie consumption with the mesomorph, maybe not more than fat loss calories for the endomorph to actually put on muscle because their body is really inefficient at assimilating and processing nutrients. So we got muscle shape in terms of genetics, we got bone structure in terms of genetics that determine how good or not good you can be In this sport long term, it's just really hard if your shape's not good to be really, really great competitively as a bodybuilder. But something we want to talk about is, remember, when it comes to genetics or bodybuilding itself and genetics, it's all about improving you. So don't let whatever genetic structure you're dealing with discourage you. Every genetic structure has a cross to bear. So like I said, the ectomorph might not have may not have the easiest time putting on muscle. The mesomorph's going to put on muscle, but has to maintain a really good diet to not put on the fat. And the endomorph doesn't have to really worry about losing muscle. They just have to work really, really, really hard to get rid of the body fat. When it comes to genetics, that's from a body type. When it comes to hormonal manipulation, some guys are just naturally higher testosterone. Some guys naturally produce higher levels of growth hormone. We see it in women. Women that are typically producing higher testosterone levels carry less hips, carry less fat on their arms. It's mostly typical women do. So hormonal balance is big. You know, if I'm able to produce higher testosterone levels, then my ability to create protein synthesis and which equates to putting on muscle faster is going to be a lot better than the person who has lower testosterone level. My ability to neurologically recruit muscle fibers when I train is going to allow me to be a lot stronger than the person that's not so efficient at it. I'm sure all you guys know somebody who just goes in the gym, they barely work out, but they go in and bench 315. Whereas the person who's been working for months to bench 315, they're struggling to even get 225, 275, and they're working really hard. Then a person comes in who barely ever works out, barely eats, barely works out, and does minimum supplementation, you know, maybe a multivitamin. They come in and they bench 315, 400 pounds. So that's what I mean by neurological recruitment of fibers. Some people are just better at it. You can see it in all sports. If you're good at running, typically you're really good at long distance or you're really good at sprinting. If you're really good at long distance, typically you have a higher level of slow twitch muscle fibers. The good thing about that is your body can actually change slow twitch muscle fibers to fast, but it can't typically go fast to slow. Anybody who as an endurance athlete can actually become a bodybuilder. However, if you're predominantly fast twitch muscle fibers, like your sprinters, people that are very explosive, very fast, but don't run long distances, not very good at long distances, you're gonna have a hard time switching over to some type of endurance athletic type endeavor. Doesn't mean you can't get better, but it's gonna be hard for you to compete at the highest level. Now, if we look at bodybuilding and the fast twitch muscle fiber, those are your thicker, denser, higher threshold motor units. So they're gonna be the muscle fibers that allow you to have a thicker physique, denser physique, be able to push heavier weights, be able to be better at being extremely powerful and creating that powerful physique that when people go out there, go, man, he's dense, he's shredded, he's hard, you know, and his muscle bellies are full and round. That typically comes from your higher threshold motor units or your fast twitch muscle fiber. So it takes, you know, all muscle fibers to make a complete physique, but typically you're predominantly one or the other. So that's going to make a difference genetically as well. And we talked about earlier the shape of the muscle. So we know that longer muscle bellies are going to allow you to look more complete because you have shorter insertions. So, you know, it's actually funny, like you take the difference. Kevin Lavrone's bicep, very long, but it doesn't peak quite as well as Ronnie Coleman's, right? That has to do with how long the muscle belly is and its insertion point. But when you have longer muscle bellies, typically you have better calves, right? Like the long insertion coming up from the ankle, the soleus muscle, gives you that diamond shape, the gastrocnemius muscle on top. If that insertion point is longer, it's going to give you better calves. Typically, guys that are really, really fast, like sprinters and stuff, don't have the best calves. But that's genetic. Nothing you're going to do to change that muscle shape. You can make what you have bigger, fuller, thicker, but you're not going to change that muscle shape, right? So when we're looking at muscle bellies, you know, just picture, you know, your bicep. You know, your bicep has two heads to it, and when you flex it, we look at the entire shape of the muscle. That's your muscle belly. If we're looking at, you know, again, the quadricep is 4 different muscles, and we're looking at each head of the muscle. but is when we're looking at the muscle belly. Okay, so it's basically the shape, the size, and how it presents itself in relation to the joints. So if the joints are small, obviously I don't need quite as much muscle on the outside of my quad muscle to make my sweeps look bigger, right? Because the illusion is if my hip structure is small, my knee structure is small, then I only need this much muscle, as opposed to if I'm thicker, I need that much muscle to give the illusion of a better sweep on my quads, on my thighs. And even a better example would be this. If my hip structure is smaller, then obviously I don't need to put on quite as much width on my lats to give that illusion of a beautiful V taper, right? If my hip structure is wider, then I gotta put on even more muscle mass to allow myself to have that nice V taper. So I think understanding your physique and what you're presented with, you know, the beautiful part about bodybuilding is that if we're talking from a competitive standpoint, I can present myself in a way that's more dramatic, less dramatic for different muscle parts. You know, if I'm really good, like if I have a great chest, I know if when I'm posing, I gotta accentuate that look, maybe to hide the fact that maybe my front deltoids aren't as good as I would like them. But there's ways to maneuver around that to help you display your physique in its best light. When it comes to genetics, you know, there's talk of what's called myostatin, which is a protein that's in the muscle that can inhibit muscle growth. And some say that guys that are not hard gainers don't possess that protein. That's not scientifically proven, but we have seen it in other animals like bulls and things like that, where you see they just grow muscle like crazy. There's a lot of negatives to that because they typically don't live as long, but the point is in bodybuilding, there's something that allows certain people to be more responsive, whether it's higher testosterone level, whether it's higher IGF-1 levels, greater growth hormone levels, or the fact that maybe we don't have that same myostatin gene as prevalent as the average person does. But all that being said, none of this presents itself, none of this happens without really, really hard work, extreme focus, and extreme discipline to be consistent day in and day out. So it doesn't really matter what your genetics are in terms of being a better bodybuilder when it's you versus you. If you're trying to be Phil Heath, if you're trying to be Ronnie Coleman, or any top level IFBB pro, here are a couple things you should know. If you have to take extreme measures to win a local show, you're probably never going to be in the IFBB at the top level, because guys like a Flex Wheeler, like even myself, even Phil Heath, they were great even before they really knew what they were doing. Because like even as a teenager, like I said, I was going to NPC shows and doing really well, winning my class in the open class, even as a teenager. You look at Sean Roden, him and I competed together as teenagers, and he was winning open titles at a national level when he was like 20, 21 years old, as a natural bodybuilder. And that's key, as a natural bodybuilder. So genetically, if you're gifted to be one of the top guys, you really don't need a whole lot of supplementation early on, because your body's just responding. Your natural shape is beautiful, and it's something that is usually above the rest. So genetics play a part from that aspect. But in terms of making gains, making changes, improving your look, improving your body, anyone at any level can be better on a daily basis if they're looking at it me versus me and trying to improve their physique on that level. Okay, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. My take on genetics when it comes to bodybuilding. Like I said, I truly believe that they do play a part, but again, focus, discipline, and consistency can overcome a lot. And I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something, and feel free to like, subscribe to the channel, and you know, let us know your questions, and we can answer them at a later time.